Of course, the justification for the additional expense for the water is that it provides a local source of water, maybe a little bit more secure, securely supplied than the 60% surface water that comes from metropolitan water districts of Southern California. Even though the energy required to pump the water up the aqueduct is the same as the energy required for desalination, the aquifer, or I should say the aqueduct infrastructure already exists. So of course that's going to keep the cost cheaper, as also local Californians have to come up with the money to provide the same water, whereas the infrastructure project was something that was state and even federally funded back in the 50s. The brings up the two aqueducts that go to Orange County. The Los Angeles Aqueduct goes to the Los Angeles County, and I'll actually start talking about the aqueducts there because it was historically the first one. But at least for Orange County, the two that supply water augmentation for the Orange County groundwater basin is the California Aqueduct, which runs all the way to Lake Paris, and the Colorado River Aqueduct, which runs to Lake Matthews. So about aqueduct systems, obviously we have examples from antiquity. Of course, the Roman aqueduct, being able to move water from where you have it to where you need it. And in the case of Roman aqueducts were amazing in that they were gravity fed, and if you're going to move water from a region that's generally uphill or higher than your city where you're wanting to deliver the water, you still need to get over valleys and over mountains. But if you design a system such as this raised level aqueduct, the water running on the top of the aqueduct, which probably doesn't exist anymore, it's a archaeological finding, but at least the trough that fed the water along the aqueduct, you can see it was downhill to get across this valley. And this is the design. A gravity-fed aqueduct system was the design of the very first aqueduct that was built between Owens Valley and LA County. So in general, three main aqueducts serve LA and Orange County together. Orange County receiving water only from the California Aqueduct, shown in red, and the Colorado River Aqueduct, shown in purple. The first aqueduct to be built was Los Angeles I Aqueduct, which is gravity fed, shown in yellow. It runs from Owens Valley, which is east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, between the Sierras and the state line in Nevada. That water is actually at a higher elevation, so can run downhill all the way to LA County, as long as you can get through a couple of mountain ranges and a couple of valleys along the way. The Los Angeles Aqueduct number 1 was the first one that was built by Mulholland, William Mulholland, and it was opened, I believe the year was 1907, that was first in operation. And the next aqueduct that was built, Mulholland, towards the end of his career, started the Colorado River Aqueduct. And then that was probably finished in the early 1920s. And then the California Aqueduct was built in the 1950s. The Los Angeles II Aqueduct was built basically parallel to the path of the Los Angeles I Aqueduct, and that's shown in green here, and that was built in the 1970s. So looking at the natural water supply, the natural water basins that are contributing to these aqueducts, starting with the Los Angeles I Aqueduct, snowmelt coming off of the eastern Sierra Nevada runs into the Owens Valley. You can also see it runs towards Mono Lake up at the north. The locals always correct me, it's Mono Lake. Mono Lake up in the northern end of the Owens Valley. And you can see the green region where along the aqueduct in Owens Valley, which is basically receiving snowmelt from the Sierras. That runs down to LA. The Colorado River Aqueduct, well, obviously that's fed from the entire Colorado River basin, which extends all the way into Colorado and even up into Wyoming. And then lastly, the water for the California Aqueduct is up. It's the Sacramento River Valley, and the controversy with feeding the aqueduct is that it's taken water from the Sacramento Delta, which is where the Sacramento River goes into the Bay Area. This region historically flooded. The idea in the 1950s for the aqueduct was to take the floodwaters and move them to where the water was needed. But the problem is now environmentally is there's a fish that depends on a freshwater influx from the Sacramento Delta called the Delta smelt. And so there's always a controversy between how much diversion of the water should go to California, Southern California, versus how much of the water should be allowed to return naturally into the Bay Area. The same is true, by the way, with Mono Lake. There was an environmental concern with water diversions away from Mono Lake into the Owens Valley system, ultimately to the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And Mono Lake, about a 20-year environmental fight to reestablish at least some flow back to Mono Lake to maintain its freshwater or its level of freshwater influx to the generally salty lake. That concludes part 7 of my talk, What's in My Water and Where's It From? Be sure to tune in to part 8, where we're going to take a closer look at the Los Angeles Aqueduct.